It was a picture-perfect celebration. The flowers were fresh, the cake immaculate. The bride's dress shimmered like something out of a fairy tale. But what no one saw that night was the shadow hanging over every smile. A secret so tightly buried, it took a murder to unearth it. David Carter was 28, tall, quiet, and methodical. He worked in finance and hated attention. Alyssa Hart was 27, a vibrant soul with a laugh that could stop traffic. They were high school sweethearts. On July 8th, they got married, and standing next to David was Marcus Lane, the best man, his best friend, or so everyone thought. They grew up together, played football, roomed in college. No one could imagine David without Marcus nearby, but no one ever asked why they were so close. The wedding was held at a luxury inn in the Blue Ridge Mountains, secluded, private, expensive. The kind of place meant for new beginnings, but for one of them, it would be the end. The ceremony went off without a hitch. Laughter, dancing, toasts, and in every photo, there's Marcus, watching, smiling, sometimes just watching. Guests would later say it was one of the most beautiful nights they'd ever experienced. And yet, no one saw David and Marcus disappear briefly during the reception. Just 15 minutes. 15 minutes no one could explain. By midnight, the bride was alone in the honeymoon suite. David had told her he'd be back shortly, but he never came. The next morning, Alyssa woke up to an empty bed. At first, she assumed he'd fallen asleep with friends, or maybe Marcus. But then she saw the blood, a faint smear near the bathroom sink, a handprint, almost invisible. The maid found more blood on the towels. When police arrived, they found a trail. It led out the back door of the suite, down a gravel path, into the woods. There, less than 200 yards away, they found David, face down, barefoot, strangled. The only thing missing was Marcus. The best man was gone. No calls, no texts, no goodbye. Just vanished. Alyssa collapsed at the scene. And when she was finally able to speak, her voice trembled, but they were like brothers. The police didn't believe this was a random act. No forced entry, no valuables taken, and only two people had access to that room. One was the bride, the other was the best man, but the bride had never left, and Marcus was now a fugitive. They began combing through the footage from the venue. There he was, David and Marcus, captured on camera, walking down the hallway at 12:08 a.m. Their faces unreadable. They didn't speak, just walked. That was the last time David was seen alive. Friends and family flooded social media with tributes. "No way Marcus could do this," one cousin wrote. He loved them both, but the truth was already unraveling. Behind the fairy tale wedding, behind the perfect best man speech, behind the vows and the velvet tuxedo, there was a secret only two men knew, and only one survived to tell it. Midnight, the moment the world turns silent, the moment lovers become strangers, and secrets refuse to stay buried. At 12:08 a.m., David and Marcus were seen walking toward the back wing of the inn. No one else followed, no one else noticed. The celebration was still going strong. Down the hallway, into a stairwell, then gone. The suite David shared with Alyssa remained untouched for nearly 2 hours. Alyssa was asleep, still in her dress. She remembers checking her phone at 2:13 a.m. No messages. She assumed David was out having one last drink with Marcus. One final goodbye to single life. But David never came back, not to the suite, not to the world. At 7:46 a.m., a housekeeper knocked on the door. She was scheduled to bring breakfast. When no one answered, she entered. The bed was neatly made. Alyssa was curled up on the couch, still waiting. The bathroom light was on, and on the edge of the sink, a streak of dark red, thin, almost dry. The maid froze. She called the front desk. The front desk called the police. By 8:21 a.m., detectives were on site. David's phone was found on the nightstand. Still unlocked, battery at 17%. Last activity, a text never sent. It read, "We can't keep doing this. His tuxedo jacket was on the floor. His shoes were by the bed. But David himself was gone. K9 units swept the property. At 9:52 a.m., one of them barked, near the tree line, the edge of the woods, there hidden under pine needles and brush. They found a body. David was cold. Bruises around the neck, fingernail scratches on his forearm. No defensive wounds, he hadn't fought back, but there was something else on his left wrist. A faint outline, like a ring had been worn there, but not a wedding band. It was thinner, older. One officer quietly muttered, "This wasn't just a fight." Meanwhile, Marcus's room was already empty. His tux was gone, his duffel bag missing, his rental car vanished, but his phone still in the drawer. Police checked the logs. No calls made after 11:40 p.m., no texts, but the last location, ping, exactly where David's body was found. It was no coincidence. Security footage showed Marcus walking out of the venue alone. No suitcase, no visible blood. He turned left, disappeared into the trees. Detectives issued a statewide alert. Flyers, bulletins, and digital posts flooded local news. Missing Marcus Lane, 28. Last seen, wedding venue. Known associate of the victim. The bride was brought in for questioning. Her voice was broken, eyes hollow. "He loved David," she whispered. "They were always together, but I never thought, never imagined." And then she said something strange. "He kissed him once. Years ago. They said it was a joke, but it hadn't been." The deeper detectives dug, the more they realized this wasn't a random act. This wasn't about a fight. This was about something forbidden, a love that lived in the shadows, a friendship no one dared to question. Until now. In the hours that followed, investigators pieced together the timeline. David left the reception at 11:50 p.m. Marcus followed shortly after. They met in the hallway. They entered the stairwell together. No cameras beyond that point. At 1:37 a.m., a door alarm went off on the eastern fire exit. No one reported it, but the timestamp aligned with the blood trail in the woods. By sunrise, one man was dead, and the other was nowhere to be found. But what no one knew yet was that this wasn't just about betrayal. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about a promise, one that had been made long before the wedding and shattered on the very night it was supposed to be fulfilled. Secrets don't stay buried, not forever, not when the past is written down, and especially not when it lives inside a phone. 3 days after the murder, detectives received permission to access David's phone records. At first, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Work emails, wedding plans, pictures, but hidden inside a folder titled Travel Docs was something else. Screenshots, videos, messages between David and Marcus. It started 4 years earlier. Midnight texts, photos from hotel rooms, selfies, never posted, and lines that broke hearts. "I wish I could love her like I love you. One more night, that's all I want. Do you ever think about what we could have been? And finally, promise me this ends after the wedding. Promise me." There it was. Undeniable. The groom and his best man had been lovers, not just once, but for years, quietly, carefully, secretly. It explained everything. Why David was always closest to Marcus. Why they always planned trips without inviting Alyssa. Why he hesitated at the altar. One guest would later admit, he paused, right before he said, "I do." It was only for a second, but I swear he was about to cry. Detectives found a journal in David's bag. It wasn't digital, it was real, ink and paper. One entry dated the week of the wedding read, "Marcus asked me to run away with him, said we could leave everything behind. I told him no. It's too late. I love her too, but not the same way." Another entry, "He won't let this go. I'm scared what he'll do if I say goodbye." By now, the case had gone viral. Social media was ablaze. The groom was cheating on his bride with his best man. Was it a love triangle or a trap? She had no idea. Alyssa refused to speak publicly, but sources close to her said she was devastated, not just by the betrayal, but by the silence. No one told her, a friend said. She walked down that aisle thinking she had it all. Meanwhile, Marcus's background was under scrutiny. No criminal record, no history of violence, but a series of therapy appointments over the last 8 months. The notes, though sealed, hinted at emotional instability, obsessive tendencies, a fear of abandonment. Friends told investigators Marcus had grown distant in the months before the wedding. He said David changed, one of them shared. Said he didn't smile anymore. Said the wedding was a mistake. And then there was the ring, the one David wore on his left wrist, hidden under his cuff. Not the wedding band, the other one, a thin silver band, engraved inside with the words, "You found me first." A match was later found in Marcus's apartment, a pair, one missing, one left behind. Detectives now had motive, a love denied, a promise broken, and a man who had nothing left to lose. But they still didn't have Marcus. The man at the center of it all was still gone, until a new ping showed up, an ATM withdrawal, $60, 2 towns over. The man was wearing a hoodie, face down, but unmistakably Marcus. He was still in the state, still running, still holding on to something. Was it guilt or was it hope? Hope that maybe the truth would stay buried, that maybe, just maybe, no one would ever learn what happened in that suite on the night 2 men said goodbye for the very last time. It had been 9 days since David Carter was found dead in the woods behind his honeymoon suite. 9 days since Marcus Lane, his best man, his lover, vanished without a trace. Until now. On day 10, a quiet rural bank received an alert. A withdrawal, just $60, had been made from a joint ATM. The security footage wasn't clear, but investigators recognized the gait, the slouched shoulders, the left-handed swipe. It was Marcus, still in the state, still alone. He hadn't used his phone, he hadn't contacted family, but he was still moving, carefully. The ATM was located 62 miles from the wedding venue. A 2-hour walk, a 40-minute drive. Police canvassed the area. No vehicle had been rented, no buses purchased under his name. But then came a break. A gas station clerk remembered him, said he walked in barefoot, said he looked haunted. He didn't speak, just bought water. Wouldn't even take the change. Nearby CCTV picked him up again, this time heading east, toward a stretch of cabins near the river. The property belonged to Marcus's uncle. It had been vacant for years. When police arrived, they found the front door slightly ajar. Inside, a sleeping bag, 2 empty cans of tuna, and a notebook. But no Marcus. The window was open. Footprints in the dirt led away from the property. He was gone again. Inside the notebook were entries, brief, fragmented, scribbled in panic. I told him to wait. He said it was over, that we were done. I begged, and one line that chilled everyone who read it. I didn't mean to hurt him, I just didn't want to be erased. The notebook also included coordinates, a lake where Marcus and David once camped together as teens. Detectives considered it. Maybe he was circling back. Maybe guilt was guiding his steps. A regional manhunt began. Flyers were posted, aerial units deployed, but Marcus knew these woods. He grew up hiking them, and for 2 more days, he stayed one step ahead. Meanwhile, the public's opinion was splitting. Some saw him as a monster, others a man pushed too far. Headlines now screamed, "Groom's secret lover still on the run." Was it love, obsession, or revenge? But to detectives, it was simpler. This was a man cornered by his own emotions, by a relationship that lived in silence for too long, and a goodbye he couldn't accept. On day 13, Marcus was spotted again. A farmer reported a man sleeping under a tarp in a nearby field. By the time police arrived, he was gone. But a trail of torn fabric and broken grass told them he was getting tired. And so was the story. The world was watching, the family was grieving, the bride was silent, and the man they all wanted to find was walking deeper into the forest, carrying nothing but the weight of what he'd done. Sometimes the truth doesn't come through a confession in court. It doesn't scream over a 911 call. It whispers through pages, written by a hand no longer trying to run. On day 16, they found him. Or rather, they found what he left behind. In a storm drain, just outside the state line, Hidden beneath an overpass, a flashlight glinted against something odd. A shirt, stained, folded neatly, under it, another notebook. The handwriting was shaky, almost unreadable, as if every word burned the page as it landed. Marcus had written everything, not just the night of the wedding, but years of longing, of hiding, of rage. The first page read, "If you're reading this, I'm not running anymore. I just wanted him to love me back, fully, finally." The next entries went deeper. "We used to lie under the stars and talk about running away. He told me I was the only one who really knew him. But then he chose her and said we were a mistake. Then the final night, he told me it was over, that the wedding was real, that we were just a phase. I asked him, was it ever real to you? And he said nothing. He turned to leave. I grabbed his wrist. I begged him to stop. I didn't mean to hurt him, but when he said goodbye, I couldn't breathe. I just wanted one more minute with him." Detectives analyzed the writings. Every detail matched the timeline. The stairwell, the exit alarm, the trail through the woods. This wasn't speculation anymore. This was a confession, one written not in blood, but in heartbreak. Forensics matched the shirt to Marcus. Bloodstains matched David's. He had been there. He had left him. And then, he had disappeared into the trees. But the walls were closing in. Tips were pouring in hourly. Sightings, rumors, false alarms. And then one. That turned out to be true. A woman in a rural town reported a man sleeping behind a storage unit. She didn't know his name, but she said, his eyes looked like he hadn't slept since the world ended. Police arrived quietly. No sirens, no chase. Marcus didn't run. He was barefoot. Thin hands raised before they even asked. He said 3 words, "I loved him," and nothing else. As he was led away in handcuffs, one officer noted, he looked relieved. The search was over, but the story was just beginning. They say the courtroom is where justice is served, but sometimes it's just where the pain is repeated. Again and again. Marcus Lane was charged with second-degree murder. He entered the courtroom wearing a plain gray shirt and handcuffs. He didn't look at the gallery. He didn't look for Alyssa. The prosecution laid it out clearly. Premeditated confrontation, intent to harm, and a calculated attempt to flee. But his defense told another story. They said Marcus wasn't a killer. They said he was a man scorned, unraveling in real time. A man whose entire identity had been buried by the person he trusted most. The evidence spoke loudly. The journals, the bruises, the timeline, the message on David's phone. "We can't keep doing this," and Marcus's own words, scrawled in ink. "I didn't want to be erased." Alyssa sat in the front row every day, sometimes with tears, sometimes with anger, but always with silence. On the final day of trial, she took the stand, her voice steady, her words unforgettable. "I married a man who loved someone else. I buried a man who didn't know how to choose, and I'm still standing here, alone." The jury deliberated for just under 6 hours. Their verdict, guilty, not of first-degree murder, but of manslaughter. 35 years in prison, no possibility of parole until year 22. The courtroom didn't erupt, it exhaled. After the trial, Marcus was escorted out. As he passed by Alyssa, he whispered something. No one else heard it, but she never shared it. To this day, no one knows what he said. The case became a national talking point, not just for the murder, but for what it represented. Secrets, suppressed identity, the fear of truth, and the cost of silence. Alyssa moved away 6 months later. She changed her last name, donated her wedding dress, and started a foundation focused on LGBTQ mental health and trauma. At a press conference, she said, "This wasn't about who they loved. It was about how they hid it and how it destroyed them both." The venue where the wedding took place has since closed. Too many questions, too much history. But in a frame on a wall, there's still a photo. David and Marcus, teenagers, arms over each other's shoulders, smiling. Before the bride, before the blood, before it all fell apart. We tell ourselves that love is simple, that vows protect us, that the past stays where we leave it. But sometimes, love is quiet and dangerous and full of ghosts. This wasn't just a murder. It was a story about what happens when the truth is buried, until someone dies trying to hold it in. If you or someone you know is struggling with identity, emotional trauma, or abuse, please seek support. You are not alone.